Hello, my name is Alicia Gulbranson, and today I would like to present the question of why do teachers assume lower expectations of students from at-risk families? In researching this topic, I found that many educators fall into a cycle that generates repetitive expectations year after year. This can be detrimental to a student's social and emotional learning, which tends to lead to academic failure. Creating expectations that are fair and impartial yet maintain a high quality should include all students of all levels and all backgrounds. Expectations are made to model growth and support in a learning environment. In my personal experience, students from at-risk families are already fighting a battle of educational labels that are usually formed in early elementary and follow through graduation. With predetermined labels, students feel little self-worth and become behaviorally difficult. The educational gaps in social, emotional, and academic skills are declining nationwide, but are still a concern of every school today. Teacher collaboration is important and meaningful to ensure a solid plan for each student. In joining together, sometimes assumptions are made without proper observation and without updated information. This can lead to misleadings, misunderstandings, and cause teachers to develop an unreliable assumption in the student's social, emotional, and/or academic skills. With the concerns I have just covered, along with teacher efficacy, trauma-informed training, and student perceptions, I will attempt to answer my concern of why teachers assume lower expectations of students from at-risk families. I will also share fundamental strategies that will ensure a supportive outlook for classroom teachers and establishing high expectations for all students. I would like to start out by defining at-risk. There are many angles and pathways that can lead to this label. Today I mention a few that can be considered school factors and a few that will be considered outside factors. Both are equally important and play directly from one another. An at-risk student can stem from events and circumstances of both the student and family. Some terms to describe these characteristics are learning disabilities, low test scores, disciplinary problems, grade retention, attendance, homelessness, teen pregnancy, health issues, domestic violence, and transidy, as in migrant worker families. In an article by Valerie Strauss, she states that today in educational research and practice, educators routinely use at-risk to classify students who do not perform well in traditional educational settings. However, the factors that determine at-risk are often either unknown or beyond the control of the student, caregiver, or educational provider. Utilizing the term at-risk brings great responsibility and consideration for not only the student, but their families as well. Jensen reminds teachers that when interpreting the lagging skills of a student, it may be beneficial to understand that not all students have the appropriate learning environments, and therefore not to expect necessary responses. Involving the label at risk can imply numerous concerns. Be knowledgeable and considerate when describing or addressing a student. My first why component lies with the teacher's expectations. Expectations are usually formed by the teacher's own experiences, perceptions, insights, and beliefs. They are meant to be modeled through positive relationships, embedded social and emotional skills, and respect. Nato and Bode express that learning should in no way devalue a child's background or lower expectations of them. Educators need to understand that equal is not the same, and feeling the need to lower their expectations or water down the curriculum so that all children will learn is inadequate. Teachers can become careless with their lack of effort put into the formation of expectations. They tend to continue expectations year after year, not based on each class or individual learning style. Laying out clear expectations is crucial. In doing so, you need to reform the student's thinking to help them change. Every proper response that you don't see at your school is one that you need to be teaching expectations for. The reality of teachers today stresses the importance of the student's social and emotional learning mindset and the direct effect it has on behaviors and expectation. Sorrells explains that children are expected to function according to schedules and expectations that may not be developmentally appropriate. This statement addresses the importance of continued growth and professional development to design new and engaging learning models based on a student's social, emotional, and academic standards. Expectations need only a moment to be revealed, but they last an exceptionally long time. My second component is teacher efficacy, which is the effectiveness of the teacher based on their confidence in teaching strategies and content knowledge. Some teachers may not see the positive influence they may have due to persistent student behaviors. They consider these behaviors out of their control and give little effort in supporting the student. Whitley found that teachers with a higher sense of self-efficacy were more likely to recommend a general class placement and to take responsibility for meeting the needs of students with exceptionalities in their classes. An effective teacher needs to have the confidence to present with assurance and certainty, but also have the humility when they do not have the correct information. My third component of why lower expectations are assumed is the lack of training in trauma-informed practices. Professional developments are important and aid in the overall functioning of a successful classroom. What is not covered to the extent it demands is teacher intelligence for at-risk students. Like students, educators need to be explicitly taught in certain fields in order for them to effectively teach students. Without the specific skill taught, the lack of understanding degrades their tenacity. Whitley noted, if teachers have received specific training that may improve their teaching repertoire and understanding of students with exceptionalities, they may then feel more confident teaching these students. A greater understanding of the brain and how it works with or without trauma is vital to classroom management. Steele and Mancati state the fact that there is a limited number of trauma-trained professionals available to provide services for schools around the world. This statement leaves the hanging question of whose responsibility it is to attain these trainings: teachers, administration, district, state, or federal education policy holders. My final why component lies with the student expectations. Many at-risk students feel a lack of connectedness to family and friends that demonstrate increased hopelessness over time. Therefore, expectations are not trusted or taken seriously. Nesting Lunn et al. Note that some students feel left out of the conversation when registering for school courses and in-class discussion topics and assessments. They often have a feeling of not being good enough due to the inequality of representation. When teachers are paying less attention to or interacting less with low achievers and praising low achievers less frequently than high achievers for success, these behaviors may have a direct effect on student perceptions and motivation and student-teacher relationships. Strauss wrote in the Washington Post, "If students do not feel self-worth, there is a problem known as stereotype threat, a phenomenon in which students perform worse academically when they are worried about living up to a negative stereotype about their group." Many at-risk students have fallen into a cycle of low expectations due to concerns within and outside the school walls. These forms of adversity are challenging for traumatized students and adds to the pile of stuff they carry. The intention for small group intervention is to provide specialized language instruction that students need. The program may also give rise to feelings of cultural isolation or may lower academic expectations so that participating students fall further and further behind their peers academically. Consequently, these students may drop out because they don't feel connected to a larger school culture or see the value of education, or they may lose hope that they will never catch up or graduate. Nadeau and Bode confirmed that this consequence by sharing that students whose culture, verbal or nonverbal, is acknowledged or misunderstood in their classrooms are likely to feel alienated, unwelcome, and out of place. Educators need to involve students at every level of their education, present with them with the responsibility for success, influence them to be the best they can, and give them the opportunity to demonstrate their talents and knowledge, and let them be proud of themselves. I will now switch my approach and focus on three main strategies that will naturally lead to all teachers retaining high expectations for learners of all levels. Student-teacher relationships are the fundamental of all social and emotional learning, and they allow students to feel safe, cared for, and invited to learn in a supportive environment. With social and emotional skills in control, students are able to open their learning brain and to focus and grow in their education. Jennings observed that a strong student-teacher relationship shows flexibility, follows students' leads, and incorporates students' ideas within the lesson. When a teacher can lead through example, it can form a trust that strengthens the respect and acceptance of both teacher and student. Steele and Mancati go further in stressing that a relationship involves perceiving not only what children and adolescents say, but also attending to eye signals, facial gestures, tone of voice, and even breathing rate. Relationships are based on knowing the whole student, including student strengths and weaknesses, family strengths and weaknesses, and community involvement. Communications with families can also lead to higher expectations if formed in an inviting manner. Teachers need to recognize that at-risk parents most likely have a trauma history of their own, including triggers associated with school. Many at-risk families are burdened with similar labels of their child, but through healthy conversation, these burdens can be lifted and form a team of encouragement at school and at home. Schools need to self-assess both the student and their family to fully understand the lagging skills needed to be addressed. Teachers need to be in touch with the student's home community, move beyond standardized tests, and try to forge a true connection with their student and families. Forming a connection with families that unifies the common goal of demanding the best for their child. Communicate explicitly what your obligations are to grow and develop their child, along with the support needed from at home. When teachers can properly understand the perceptions that families have for their student and the teacher, it creates an approach of positive results in student engagement, reduced absences, and improved learning. My final strategy is the level of teacher cultural competency. By establishing a classroom of culture, students can appreciate differences and open their minds to new opportunities through the empathy of other students. Each culture has different expectations. Recognize these differences and with a clear voice, communicate with your students to agree on expectations that eliminate confusion and respect all cultures represented in your classroom. Acknowledge your own biases. Reflect and be mindful as you present your learning objectives. Diversify your instruction to allow all students a level of validation in assessing skills. Using the phrase learning preferences is considered a more flexible way of approaching differences in learning. It gives a diversified approach to student assessment, yet still maintains a high expectation of content, encouraging students to become lifelong learners. Last, but certainly not least, get to know your student. Ask them about their culture. Formulate proposals together and incorporate them into the classroom for others to observe. Becoming culturally relevant in your teaching is best achieved through the cooperation of all students to generate a classroom culture of learning through the eyes of your student, not just the teacher. In conclusion, I would like to review the strategies that can be implemented to naturally allow a teacher to assure high expectations for all students. Forming reliable student-teacher relationships, opening communications with families, and addressing cultural competency are three positive approaches that will create an effective classroom for student and teacher. Learning is a lifelong process, and if we as teachers can instill that in our students and families, they may have the courage to break the cycle of labeled at-risk family. I would like to end with a quote I came across in reading, pointing out everything starts with change. Change is a journey for everyone. We need to understand where people are, learn to meet people where they are, and keep them moving. By Deborah Engelfried. Thank you.